quickly. Maybe you'd like to react to some of the things that have been said, but my question to you also is, where have we been getting it wrong as a nation? Why are we still having this conversation even after many years and several efforts?
One of the key reasons why we are getting it wrong is because of people like Sheikh Gumi. In a clear case of a war, because he's talking about bloodshed, there has been bloodshed. Nigeria has been a theater of war for almost 2 decades. Possibly it is not affecting him directly because most of the casualties, most of the mass murders is that of Christians. He appears to be a negotiator, but to be very honest with you, he has advocated more for appeasing the terrorists rather than advocating justice for the victims. And I think it's important to us because I believe he's an Islamic cleric. He understands the concept of justice. How do you deal with a scenario of people raping women, people killing soldiers, people decimating homes, people sacking communities, but then the strength of your advocacy is that the government should appease them? Where in the whole world, in the history of any war, whether guerrilla warfare, whether military warfare, have you ever found a situation where there is an active bloodshed going on and then you believe that appeasing the criminals that are carrying out these genocidal attacks and infusing them into the military will help? From the very beginning, when the notion of amnesty, de-radicalization and integration began, we have never seen a scenario where these repentant terrorists, as they call them repentant, have ever led people to their camps and they were decimated. They have been growing exponentially. They have been acquiring more arms. So that is basically the problem we are having. We are getting it wrong simply because we have managed to create a false narrative. An example is we have managed to compartmentalize terrorism or these Islamist activities to look as if it is only Boko Haram that is doing it. The reason is because the rest of the terrorist groups that are jihadist in nature have been forged into different names. For instance, he's talking about two fighting. There is no two fighting anywhere. It is important also, we would love it if you are able to have an example of one Christian militia that is operational in either Sokoto or any of the Muslim dominant state that have been raping women and killing people, then we can understand that. And at least the Muslims will equally lend their voice and say, okay, whatever it is the Americans are claiming that the Christians are suffering from, we are also suffering from it. And since it is all about eradicating terrorism, then good, come and eradicate them. But I think the problem is not just because there are foot soldiers who are killing people. It is because there are people who are sympathetic to the jihadist cause, there are people who are sponsoring them, and the involvement of any foreign nation in a scenario where there is a genocide does not end with the foot soldiers. It traces those who are sympathetic to their cause, whether because of political or religious or ideological beliefs. It equally traces those who sponsor them. And I think that is primarily where the problem lies in Nigeria. We are not sincere with the war against terrorism. Once it involves, because wherever you go to, we can't force ourselves. Most of the time, you find a lot of Muslims claiming that these people, they are not truly representing Islam and all of that, blah, 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 and all of that. But the truth is that there is an Islamist, well-armed Islamist jihadist group that has been massacring Christians. And what we find, unfortunately, people who should be speaking or condemning this act are busy trying as much as possible to create sympathy for them. You can imagine him saying that killing the terrorists will now amount to genocide. Then what would you tell the people that have been burying there? For instance, just of late in Yelewata, over 250 people were killed. But he describes that not as a genocide. He says two fighting, even though we don't know of...
All right, Zari Yusuf. I mean, we are really trying to manage time, and I know you have a lot to say. But let me bring the conversation back to Sheikh Gumi. Sheikh Gumi.
I am so happy to see someone like Zari Yusuf, who told Sheikh Gumi the absolute truth to his face. The idea of negotiating and pampering terrorists is completely unacceptable. Now, I don't mean just northern terrorists, but terrorists everywhere, whether in the south or in the north. We should not pamper or negotiate with terrorists. The problem with treating them like kings or pampering them is that it makes them bolder and more powerful, and then they commit more crime. Again, what about justice? What about their victims? So when we pamper people who have killed even soldiers, it doesn't speak well of a people who want to eradicate terrorists. And it doesn't also speak well of a people who want to show justice to the victims. We should be more concerned about the victims rather than the perpetrators. Another valid point by Yusuf is the issue of going after their sponsors. A foreign country gave our government the names of the sponsors of these terrorists, but there is nothing we have heard done about it on the side of our own government. We don't even know their names. Why not name and shame them? Why is the government seems to be hiding those people? Attitudes like this makes it look as if government is shielding the terrorists. So government should parade those suspects, no matter who they are, just like they parade other criminals. The idea of integrating the so-called repentant terrorists into the Nigerian army is something else. Sincerely, if I'm a soldier, I won't be comfortable fighting side by side with a so-called repentant terrorist. We can engage them in other things, but personally, recruiting them into our military is not okay. For me, for us to get the issue of security, the government must show commitment and strong political will to do the needful. The government should not pamper terrorists, but deal with them decisively. All over the world, governments don't negotiate with terrorists. Instead, they go after them and deal with them. May Nigeria succeed, and may the bloodshed stop across Nigeria. This also points to a leadership failure. It shows how weak Bola Tinubu is in handling serious national issues such as security. This shows he is incapable of standing for ordinary Nigerians, Christians, Muslims, and every other people. APC may be good in their divisive politics, but very weak in governance. Governance and politics are completely two different things. This is why it becomes necessary, as Nigerians, that come 2027, we must elect a leader who will have the political will to deal with the issues at hand. A leader who will not look at anybody's face and do the right things. And that leader is Mr. Peter Obi. He did it in Anambra State as governor, where he dismantled all the godfathers and the big men holding Anambra State down and governed Anambra State effectively. He will do same in Nigeria by God's grace.
One of the key reasons why we are getting it wrong is because of people like Sheikh Gumi. In a clear case of a war, because he is talking about bloodshed, there has been bloodshed. Nigeria has been a theater of war for almost 2 decades. Possibly it is not affecting him directly because most of the casualties, most of the mass murders is that of Christians. He appears to be a negotiator, but to be very honest with you, he has advocated more for appeasing the terrorists rather than advocating justice for the victims. And I think it's important to us because I believe he's an Islamic cleric. He understands the concept of justice. How do you deal with a scenario of people raping women, people killing soldiers, people decimating homes, people sacking communities, but then the strength of your advocacy is that the government should appease them?